with me this morning are Millie Cook, political correspondent at The Independent, and Lettice Bromowski, reporter at Mail Online. So welcome back to both of you.
Yeah.
This hour, we're kicking off with the front page of The Eye, aren't we, Millie? And
Yes.
This is a sense of, well, they say Labour rebels smell blood. This after the climb down by the government over welfare reforms. Some of these MPs think they might be able to get the government to backtrack on other issues.
Absolutely. I think Keir Starmer last week, he massively rode back on welfare, and it left Labour MPs feeling like they've got an awful lot of control over the direction of the government. And I think also two-child benefit cap's always been really important to Labour MPs. It's a really hated policy. Lots of people say it's the main driver of child poverty. And now that they've rode back on welfare, the government's got a lot less money to spend on things like this. So after that vote, there was sort of a growing feeling that they may now not be able to row back on the two-child benefit cap. But apparently Starmer's now under pressure from his own cabinet to sort of scrap the cap. A few weeks ago, Keir Starmer himself said he wants the cap to end, but he's going to wait until the child poverty strategies come to an end in autumn. So he's sort of under growing pressure to do it. But I think The Eye has figures that say it would cost up to £9.7 billion, including those welfare U-turns we saw last week.
Yeah, 3.5 billion, it says on the front page, for the two-child benefit cap.
And if you add the £5 billion cost of the U-turn on welfare, it takes almost £10 billion, which would wipe out Rachel Reeves' headroom. So it's a really tricky policy to implement.
Yeah, and Rachel Reeves still trying to find the money to plug the gap from the welfare reforms as well.
No, exactly. They don't have any money. And this sort of constant flip-flopping between we're putting an idea out there, we're going to go down this line, whether it's winter fuel payments, whether it's these welfare reforms, you know, whether it's even Keir Starmer in his speeches that was the island of strangers, which he then rode back on and said, you know, I regret what I said. He doesn't seem to be able to potentially take a strong stance or stand up to the people within his own party at all. And it's becoming a bit of a repetitive pattern.
Although he did, right up until the last minute, and some say that perhaps he should have read the room sooner, Keir Starmer seemed to be adamant that he wanted to push through with the welfare change.
Well, exactly, until the last minute. And then again, what we're seeing on the front pages again is now more tax hikes that were for the past year. We've been told that, well, there won't be any, you know, we're going to protect working people, we won't do this to businesses, we're all about growth. And then they're doing these things and changing their minds on it. Quite frankly, now I'm not sure if people can really trust what they're putting out there at all.
I'm going to leap ahead. We were going to come to this later on, but it kind of fits into what we're discussing now. The front page of the Daily Express with a similar headline to The Guardian, who has an interview with the Chancellor. The Express's headline there, Reeves hints at more tax rise pain. I mean, for a long time, Rachel Reeves has said that the tax rise pain was in the last budget, but the sense now that she has got to plug a gap, and tax rises might be the way that she chooses to do that.
Exactly. This sort of looks a little like she's kind of soft-sounding tax rises ahead of the budget. I know it's 4 months out at the moment, but if she drops this bomb in just before the budget when everyone is paying full focus on that, it'll be very, very bad for the Labour Party. The fact of the matter is they've got this 40 billion black hole to sort of plug, and the reforms that we've been talking about that they've U-turned on recently means that they just don't have any money at the moment, and they boxed themselves in during the general election last year when she ruled out putting increase in taxes in income tax, VAT or national insurance. They already annoyed businesses by going back on national insurance a little bit and what some would have seen as a break of a pledge when they increased it just for employers. So that was a £25 billion raise that they found. But she's got to find money somewhere for this. She's either going to betray voters or she's going to be getting into fights within her own party because she's going to have to cut spending from departments.
Well, yeah, and the atmosphere within the Labour Party is really interesting, isn't it? As you pointed out, talking about the rebellion over welfare reforms. And it kind of leads into the story that we've got here in the Express about Jeremy Corbyn's new party. This first announced by a suspended Labour MP, Zara Sultana, announcing that she was leaving the Labour Party. She said she was going to co-lead a party with Jeremy Corbyn, who was then quiet for about 24 hours. But then he did confirm that new discussions about a party were underway. I mean, how much appeal might a party like this have, do you think, to some disaffected Labour MPs?
I mean, even before this week's sort of welfare chaos, there was sort of increasing talk about Labour MPs becoming unhappy with the direction of the government. There was some chatter about MPs defecting even to the Greens, maybe. So this is sort of an offering that is separate to the Greens, would be a left-wing Labour offering led by someone who's obviously a big figure in the party with Corbyn at the helm. So I think it would be appealing, but equally, it hasn't had much take-up yet. We saw John McDonnell and Diane Abbott both saying that they weren't going to be defecting to the party, and they're already very closely allied with Corbyn. So that kind of speaks volumes about the feeling around the party. Maybe people aren't so enthusiastic about it after all, or not yet anyway.
What do you think? I mean,
think-
could this put pressure on the government at all?
Like, definitely. For a long time, Labour have never had the sort of breakaway left party that the right have constantly had, whether that's from Reform, UKIP or the Brexit Party, whatever it is, the right, the Conservatives have always been battling a sort of further right than them in the way that Labour never have. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with this. The fact of the matter is really, though, is how they've launched this has been complete chaos. First of all, to launch it in a tweet on X, I think just is not the way to go about it. You want the media frenzy around it. You want people to know that this is coming. And then, as you mentioned, there was a very, very long sort of pregnant pause before Jeremy Corbyn came out. And what he said in his statement was, I'm very glad that she's decided to join us and work with us. Sort of, are we seeing already a bit of tussle of power at the top of this party? Is it her party? Is it his party? Are they really co-leaders together? Like we said, we don't really know anything about this party yet, but it's very interesting and it's off to a rough start.
Well, yes, and no formal launch, no name, kind of acknowledgement of definitive
exactly.
leaders. So there's lots of questions.
Yeah.
But,
there were reports that perhaps she came out and launched this because she was about to be expelled from the Labour Party, and this was her sort of way of doing that. I believe she has denied those reports, but it's interesting as to why she decided on her own to just go for it and launch it.
Yeah, well, it certainly prompted lots of discussion in the papers and elsewhere. In the meantime, Millie, take us to the front page of the Daily Telegraph, because seeing as we're discussing parties outside the traditional mainstream parties that are often the focus, we've got Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister, of course, commenting on reform and how to deal with it. What's his advice?
Just ignore Farage is his advice, which I feel like if it was as easy as that, I think Starmer and Kemi Badenoch would be having a much better time. I think the point of it really is, it's very easy for Boris to spend far too much time talking about Nigel Farage. Keir Starmer said repeatedly that Nigel's the official opposition. So I think perhaps he's sort of making a dig at the fact that people are spending too much time talking about reform when they've only got 5 MPs. However, obviously, it's really hard to ignore them when they're doing so well in the polls. We had MRP polling last week saying that they would sort of win the most seats in Parliament. They'd reduce Tories to sort of really small numbers, and it would do it. Labour, I think, were down at sort of 178 seats. So it's like they are doing very well, and I think that it's very hard to ignore them. But obviously, Boris Johnson, when he was in power, he basically saw off the threat from the Brexit Party. So I think he's just saying, do what I did and ignore them, but it's definitely not that simple for Kemi Badenoch.
What do you make of this?
I think it's a bit of a stretch. I think it's very, like you said, it's easy for him to be like, oh, just ignore it. He did say in it that, you know, I just ignored it and I did fine. But reform, as it is now, was not around when Boris Johnson was around. It was the Brexit Party. And when he first came in, they were on about 19%, which isn't so far off what reform is on now, around 26%. So I do think it is quite easy for him to say that. He has a point in the sense that Farage plays to the media. He is a sort of personality in that sense, in the same sense that Kemi and Keir Starmer aren't. They're not as easy and, you know, have a pint in a pub kind of vibe that Farage is. The interview in itself, I think, is very strange. At many points in this interview, Boris Johnson goes into about how he's not coming back into politics because he's got to pay for his wife's new kitchen refurbishment, which, again, that to me rings alarm bells that maybe he is actually thinking about coming back into politics, which is why he would say something so strange. But, yeah, I think it's easier said than done to ignore him. Farage is doing very well, and I think realistically, reform will likely be the arbiters of their own downfall, because now it's really turned them to be able to prove that they can translate the public support of them into real power, into real change in the local elections where they've just won almost 600 seats.
Yeah, but certainly the main parties are struggling to know how to handle it at the moment, aren't they? And whether or not they're getting that right or not is something that lots of people can debate. In the meantime, let's go to another story that is dominating a lot of the front pages, and that is the reunion of Oasis that went on last night. Millie, you an Oasis fan?
I'm not a huge Oasis fan. I wish I was. I feel slightly excluded from all the front pages that are talking about Oasis. Obviously, it was a very big moment, I'm told. First gig in 16 years, 70,000 fans there. I mean, I think people the headlines seem to be much more positive than the sort of media storm a few months ago when everyone was talking about the ticket sort of battle with people paying hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So I think it's good news for everyone that the headline.
Yeah, people don't seem to mind
No, not
if they did get tickets.
And
anyway.
they don't seem to mind at all. They even made a bit of a jibe during during the performance. They said it like, I hope all the £4,000 tickets were worth it. If I heard that and they were making a dig at me after I paid that much, I'd be outraged. The crowd seemed completely fine with it and they
I
laughed
think it was
a lot.
supposed to be very light-hearted, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We're out of time. We'll have a reunion in another hour. See you then.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.